What's going on, guys? Yoistin here, bringing you another Middle-earth Explained video. In this video series, I take common questions about Middle-earth and answer them as best as I may. A few months ago, I did a video on the functions and uses of the One Ring. Now I want to do a similar video on the Elven rings, and why they're actually used for the betterment of Middle-earth. 3 rings for the Elven-kings under the skies. During the Second Age of Middle-earth, Annatar, the Lord of Gifts, a false guise of Sauron the Deceiver, came to the elves of Eregion, and it is there that he taught them ringcraft. It started in the year 1200 of the Second Age, when he approached the Gwaith I Myrdain, or the Elven smiths of Eregion, who were mostly Noldorian, and began corrupting them. These elves wished for joy in their lives, similar to those who left for or still lived in Valinor. Around the year 1500 of the Second Age, the great 16 rings were forged and made for the elves. And then in the year 1550 of the Second Age, Celebrimbor, the grandson of Feanor, and a student under Annatar the Gift Lord, crafted the 3 elven rings without Sauron's interference around the year 1590 of the Second Age. The 3 rings were Narya, the Ring of Fire, Nenya, the Ring of Water and Adamant, and Vilya, the Ring of Air, and greatest of the 3. Galadriel, who Celebrimbor was in love with, was given Nenya, and Gil-galad, the Elven High King of the Noldor, was given Vilya and possibly Narya for a time, before that ring was passed to Círdan the Shipwright. The other 16 Elven rings, and all other lesser crafts made by the smiths of Eregion for practice, were eventually split up, 9 rings for mortal men doomed to die, and 7 for the dwarf lords in their halls of stone. It is speculated that one was given by the elves to Durin III, but the rest were taken by Sauron during war with the elves, and he gave them to the other races, dwarves and men, even though he had originally made them for the elves. The 9 rings turned men into wraiths, and the 7 gave the dwarves a great lust and greed, but didn't turn them to Sauron's course. The war between Sauron and the elves started around the year 1600 of the Second Age, when Sauron forged the One Ring on Mount Doom, and he tried to control the elves who wore any rings of power, and they became suddenly aware of his presence. They then took their rings off in fury. Ultimately, the One Ring was made so he could control all others that wore any other ring that he had made. And even the 3 rings made by Celebrimbor, as ultimately they were all under his master ring. After this deception, Sauron's rage came swiftly. He destroyed Eregion, found 9 rings of power, and tortured Celebrimbor, who revealed the other 7. But Celebrimbor never revealed the location of the 3 elven rings before he died, though Sauron had a guess of which elves would have these. After Sauron was defeated in the War of the Last Alliance, Gil-galad, the High King of the Noldor, had already given Elrond Half-Elven the dominant ring Vilya before he perished by Sauron's flame. Galadriel and Círdan held on to the others as well. When the Istari, or wizards, appeared in Middle-earth around the year 1000 of the Third Age, Círdan saw the power and valor of Gandalf after a time, and gifted him the ring Narya. Gandalf would use this ring to his advantage throughout the rest of the age on his many adventures, while Vilya stayed with Elrond and Nenya stayed with Galadriel. The 3 elven rings eventually came to sail over the seas, into the west together, never to be seen in Middle-earth again. Now that we've talked about the histories of the rings, let's get into their functions and truly answer a question of how these 3 rings were used for good, versus all the other rings of power being corrupting and almost completely evil. First off, the 3 rings of the elves couldn't be seen by others, unless the wearer of the ring wanted it to be seen. The One Ring could make it and its wearer invisible to the mortal world, but these rings had the power to also be invisible to the mortal world while their wearer stayed visible. And in the Wraith world, it is likely that these 3 rings would be glowing white, along with the Ainur, or spirit, of its bearer. When they could be seen, however, they were set with different colored stones. Narya had a ruby-colored stone set in it, and its power was in the keeping of hope, renewal, and strength to resist tyranny, despair, and time. When Gandalf says he is a servant of the secret fire, wielder of the flame of Anor, it may refer to the power of his Ainur and the strength that Ilúvatar put within him. This might also be a reference to Narya, because Gandalf does wield it secretly, and it is the Elven Ring of Fire. The ring had great use throughout his life, as Gandalf often gave hope to others, through his own charisma and through the power of Narya as well. When he left the Fellowship, the dread among the members was evident for many different reasons, but I'm sure they could also feel the loss of Narya keenly. On Amunhen, when Frodo had a voice tell him to take off the One Ring, and that voice battled the will of Sauron, Frodo in this moment felt both the presence of Sauron and Gandalf. And it's interesting that he could hear both of their thoughts and minds, because ultimately Sauron was the Lord of the Rings, and Gandalf was the Master of Narya, even in his return as Gandalf the White. This ring served him well throughout the rest of his life as Gandalf in Middle-earth. Moving now to Galadriel's ring. Nenya was a band of mithril with an adamant or diamond set into it. It had powers in preservation of life and lands, as well as protection and concealment, as Galadriel was able to greatly conceal and hide Lothlorien from enemy eyes, while also using her ring to build and preserve the beauty of Lothlorien. Now, when I say preservation, I don't necessarily mean a military tactic, because orcs were still able to invade the bounds of Lothlorien, but it would still be kind of shrouded from Sauron and his forces. For instance, during Eorl the Young's time, a mist covered his forces from the eyes of Dol Guldur and Mirkwood, while his army traveled near Lothlorien, and I've always thought that Nenya was responsible for that. Galadriel had also shown Nenya to Frodo in the Fellowship of the Ring, while Sam thought he saw a star through her fingers, and Aragorn told Frodo never to speak of it after the Hobbit told him about it on the boats traveling the Anduin River. The ring was great in many ways, but it also made Galadriel long for the sea, and her home of Valinor, even more than other elves, which contributed to her sorrow. But if it weren't for Nenya, Lothlorien wouldn't have been as beautiful or as powerful as it was. Finally, Vilya was given to Elrond near the end of the Second Age. It was a golden band with a blue stone set into it, and its powers ultimately were to heal and preserve. In the last chapter of The Return of the King, it is said to be the greatest of the 3 Elven Rings, and it had served to help Elrond heal many wounds throughout his long life, and it even helped him heal Frodo's Morgul wound in the Fellowship of the Ring. It also either gave or enhanced Elrond's powers of foresight and predictions, and it also aided him in the Great Flood that incapacitated the Nazgul on the Ford of Brunning. This ring aided Elrond and Rivendell until his last days in Middle-earth. With these 3 rings, great feats were achieved in Middle-earth that the hobbits would call magic. But, as all good things must, it came to an end. In 3019 of the Third Age, the 3 rings were made bare to all after the destruction of the One Ring, and all the good that they had wrought began to diminish, as the One Ring was the Master Ring, and without it, all other rings began to fail. The need for invisibility and stealth for these 3 rings were over, and they were made plain for all to see. In 3021 of the Third Age, the 3, along with their masters, and Frodo, Bilbo, and probably Shadowfax, all sailed to Valinor, leaving the Malorn trees of Lorien to wither after many centuries, and the power of Rivendell to fail after so long a time, and the hope that was given from Gandalf and his presence was never felt again in Middle-earth. Even with the destruction of the One Ring and all of its evils, it is sad that all good things that the 3 had done were also nullified after the destruction of the One. The only Malorn that would survive after a while without Nenya was the one that Sam had planted where the party tree used to be, in the party field in the Shire. These 3 rings ultimately did good things for the world because they were forged and used by some of the purest beings in Middle-earth. They had no correlation with Sauron other than being tied to his One Ring, but because the Dark Lord never touched them or used his ring while the others were in use, and because these rings didn't have the desire to corrupt or do terrible things for the world, they stayed pure, and without these 3 rings, doom would have surely prevailed in Middle-earth. These 3 rings are another theme of purity in Tolkien's writing, and they remind us to do the best that we can, whenever we can. As indeed, deep roots are not reached by the frost. Thank you all so much for watching. I want to thank Grey Eyes for a conversation that we had on a different video a while back that inspired this video. It is you all, your participation and support that help this channel grow and keep it going, so thank you all so much for that. I'm so excited to see how fast this community is growing, and I just want to say, with all the new comments and commenters, if I don't reach your comment or video suggestions for a while, or for a few weeks at least, just know that I'll try my best to respond to each one of the comments that are left below my videos in some fashion at some point. I really do appreciate all of you and the feedback you give me. The critiques and comments do go a long ways in improving this channel, And because it is such a large legendarium and I am just one person in this channel, just trying to write my scripts and make sure all the lore is present and aware, I do miss some things. But that is why this is a community. We all learn from one another. Also, with my pace at weekly videos, I will try to get to a lot of different topics that you guys leave me, but with my pace, it might be a while before you see a certain video. However, to negate this, I'll try to leave more polls on Facebook, so if you have a video that you really want to see made, just let me and others know and we'll all vote. That way I can keep as many people as I can happy, because again, that's what this channel's about, is keeping everyone talking about Middle-earth and keeping everyone happy. Speaking of which, I'm going to leave another poll for next week's video on Facebook. Link to the page is in the description below. I really want to thank you all for being such tremendous people and viewers, and let you all know that I am so lucky to have you guys watching these videos. It means a lot. Like this video if you enjoyed it, share it with a friend who you think might like it, leave your suggestions and opinions in the comments, and as always, thank you for joining me on this adventure. Until the next one, my friends.